Get this right here. Okay. So welcome into Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole, or Sharon, or Cole, whatever you want to refer to me as. No big deal, in a good way. Don't care. I've been called everything under the sun, as I always say on here, and I'll continue to say, and this would be in regards to my experience that began in 2011, not necessarily in comments or anything like that. I don't have that huge of a viewership. So sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so, and also I got a little one up in the little area where it would say that I have an audience. I tape these on private mode until I'm ready to publicize them. So it isn't every single time that I get a one up in that little corner. So it's something that I meant to ask YouTube about, like, why would that happen? And I do report incidences through through like certain tip lines and stuff, because I will continue to do things until someone makes it right. What happened and happens. So because it does make me wonder, why did a one appear and then disappear? No one should be watching this. And it's not because I'm on. I've taped many of these videos and it's always remained zero in the audience. I just do the live stream so I can I can write comments on the side. And it's the only way I know how to use my laptop camera. I don't know how to use YouTube in a different way to pre-tape per se. So anyway, at least not on my laptop. So with that said, after 2011 began, I've been called everything under the sun, rat, pig, or referred to as rat, pig, horse, cow, dog was a biggie that I had to untangle from my brain during this like massive time period of complete psychological torture and rape, to be honest. And there was actual physical rape involved at other stages of this thing. So, and there are lots of definitions of rape. Everybody thinks you're going to get pulled in an alley and that's no, there are all kinds of very manipulative, very coercive people out there, and all kinds of situations that people feel forced, and even wives out there, technically by law, could be considered having been raped if they say no, if they've said no, they don't feel like it, and they either acquiesce by force, by a little bit of force, and so forth and so on. We won't get into it. As you become, more educated in this area and have more awareness, you start to experience the world in a different way, and we'll leave it at that. But anyway, so hippo, lizard, dinosaur, what have you, all of those words, in a good way, don't care. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words shall never hurt me. With that, it is day 150 of my one video each day, 365-day campaign, trying to raise money, find someone who's willing to donate or fund me to exist or even work. I don't always know how to go out there and find like a normal work experience again because of how bad this was, and for fear of reoccurrence or constant reoccurrence of everything I've experienced since 2011, and even a little bit before. There was a setup, there was a lead-in to everything that occurred in 2011 and beyond. So anyway, with that said, I will start with my usual to let new viewers know that on the fourth Monday of January 2011, I was made to believe I'd been murdered in my apartment through a series of orchestrated events. It was a series of orchestrated events. I believed over 1,000,000% that was the last night of my life. I thought someone was coming up through the basement of a row home that was converted to apartments. I lived just above the basement in the front half, first floor of a row home at 626 South 19th Street, apartment 1F. This is just south of Sharon's Bank, and my name is Sharon, so this all plays into it. Didn't even care that bank existed in the past, but now, in retrospect, there are too many placements of things and connections to a family lineage and name that are bothersome. So even in Delaware, one of the biggest employers to emerge during my generation was MBNA Bank, credit card bank, Maryland Bank, North America. They started with the Cole House, and my name is Sharon Cole. So here we have a Sharon's Bank, which I happened to wind up moving just south of. And there's only so many branches of this thing. The word branch came up, and that might be what I need it for. So anyway, and the Cole House. So most people of a certain generation probably had an MBNA credit card because they were on the pioneering edge of the credit card concept. Our generation had to learn how to be responsible with credit. Nobody knew we can use this as money. Everybody in the past used cash or checks. All of a sudden, then we're getting debit cards for our banks, credit cards with a line of, can you be approved? And then people were learning whether or not they were approvable or not, Anyway, we won't get into it, but the Cole House of MBNA Bank happened to be placed next to Allendale Apartments. I happen to know someone named Dale and Allen, but Allen would be spelled differently in this case. But in addition, my dad's last name, he was the one who bore the name Cole, Frank Cole. He's now deceased. He wound up with a different woman. She divorced her husband. And of course, my dad divorced my mom. In those apartments was the father to my step-siblings and the ex-husband of my stepmom, per se, or their mom, or my dad's new wife. And Allendale Apartments, they're apartments. You have the Cole House. So my dad and his second wife would wind up with a house. They went through an apartment, then a townhome, and then a house. They went through like a phase or stage-like situation. But they did live in a townhouse and then a house. They purchased a new house built by Capano Builders. And of course, Capano technically wound up in the news because of a murder of Anne Marie Fahey, and Thomas Capano was the guy who was charged for murder. Big, gigantic political case, and so forth and so on. Sorry for the word, we're getting political out there. But anyway, so it's a big deal. But point being, my dad and his second wife had a house for the most part, and the father of my step-siblings lived in a garden apartment, and garden would be a nice word for the basement apartment. In old school apartments, they're still there, and you know what I mean. It's not overly desirable, but it's old. These would be old school apartments. So anyway, with that said, being long-winded here, I 100% believed I'd be murdered in my apartment that fourth Monday of January 2011. Called my sister, and she convinced me to finally call police. Called police. Turns out police don't really do much. And you would think, well, if all of this happened, then you should be, just call police. There's a lot more to finding justice in this world, it turns out. You would have to have something incredibly obvious and almost be selected in order for there to be a case. Some people argue if you are from a certain world, like say, I don't mean offense to religions or anything like that, but if you are more Christian inclined or come from that background where you were indoctrinated into that world, or if you're a certain type of person, odds are you're probably never going to wind up with a serious case because it doesn't match something, there's too much doubt. And I would be questioning, are you sure that person's guilty? Because what I think this person is, you see what I mean? And my entire experience does involve so many people that doing a lot of little things that you can't really point the finger at one person to take the fall or a group to take the fall. Do you see what I mean? In a way, it protects those who are technically innocent or heavily influenced because people were doing the bidding of a lot of other people. I do know that. And that is disturbing that there are so many followers in a hive mind mentality. But it wasn't just the first night. There's a whole decade and more of activity. And the lead up to the first night. So the first night, called my sister. She convinced me to call police. They didn't really do much. There had been an idling van that was sitting outside my window with a guy who had a headphone on, and I thought, we won't get into it. A million thoughts ran through my mind. In fact, when I called the police, I didn't even think it would go to the police. I was thinking, what came through my mind was, this is going to go, you will think you're calling the police, but really it's going to be rerouted to a special call center, dispatch center, that's really going to be like the CIA. This whole thing made me feel like an agency like the CIA had created an entire scenario. So I didn't know what to believe, but it's like, well, I have to, in the end, it's like I have to call them at some point because I'm too afraid to even walk out of my door at this, So, and we are talking terror to the point where I was convulsing. I couldn't hold the phone at first. I didn't have a voice. Turns out when you are scared, your body goes limp. It's like your blood drains, runs cold. That is actually true. Completely convulsing. I was like, and it was cold. I could barely hold the phone that I had. So anyway, and this was a small palm phone, Verizon. I no longer use Verizon for various reasons, and some people wonder if that's part of the problem. Verizon is heavily used as a communication system here in the emergency response world as well. I believe they are the number one phone service provider for lots of people out there. So in law enforcement and so forth and so on. But that was a new smartphone. I had a flip phone for years. I was late to the party on cell phones in general. Had a flip phone forever. Finally got a smartphone, but because of my experience, I went back to a flip phone because the smartphone would play into too much stimulation, too much timing, too much coincidental things popping up on my phone with where I was. It got way out of control. So my way of having control was to go back to a flip phone, pay less because I would be worried about how much money I had all the time, and to put it on silent and to not have things like emails, certain types of text messages, even what people wrote in their text messages. That would, I would come home and get like 6 text messages from 6 different people. And they would say things that would imply they knew that I just came home. I felt spied on all the time in a big ass way. So, and I do know these days, which has made life a little better, that there are people with certain capabilities that are almost impossible for most people to fathom. Like, can people hear at a higher level? Like, how do cell phones work? We had landlines before, now we have cell phones. What if people can hear even higher than that? I don't, I'm just putting it out there. But if they could, how many people would spy on you or creep you out with that capability? Should they have that capability, or a chip in the brain? We have, pets out there with chips in them, and at times it's like, can someone puppet this pet, like remote control the pet? Because I can't believe that is too weird that this is happening or that's happening. It starts to get weird. Other people would say it would be like living at a higher frequency or living on a higher plane of existence, and you can see things and it looks more weird than it would if you were in normal land. I don't think I'm, high up or anything. I do know that somewhere in there I went through a transition, and there are angels out there trying to just keep going, just keep going. And in a way, it's helped me understand the world differently and to know that there are people, especially in a city like Philadelphia, who are capable of doing things. That's that. So anyway, we'll just go with it. I'm not always a happy camper anyway. I don't have a lot of money. And hey, CIA, why don't you pay me? Give me a field job or some sort of free agent-ish type job where I deal with people on a minimal basis in case we run into a lot of jackasses again. So anyway, with that said, I will describe the lead up to this evening. A lot of things sort of predated 2011. One of them included me finding a job at a local nonprofit domestic violence agency for women. When you call a hotline, it would be directed to this agency. Go ahead and say it. Okay, so it was called Women in Transition. They still exist, but under a new directorship. Back then, it was run by someone named, I can say it, Roberta Hacker. So already you would wonder about her last name. But she had this agency supposedly for many, many years. And in a way, she was I did see the agency as having brought knowledge and a vernacular or a vocabulary or a lexicon. All of these things mean a vocabulary or a set of words and understanding for people to realize why it was so hard for women to sort of become independent, live their own lives, free of an abuse. There's so many ingredients as to why people are in abusive relationships, incredibly hard to explain. But oddly, like I understood this on some level already, but oddly, the agency turned out to be a psychologically abusive location, if you will, but in an extreme way. So I'm just going to say that as my opinion from my experience. So, but I have a laundry list of things that happened to feed on the paranoia of like to feed paranoia to someone. So I have a list in my description because so many things happened, it was ridiculous. But I'll start with cup on the wall because that's what I put in the title. So I was a part-time advocate counselor. So I didn't work full-time. That's right? Okay, so I was a part-time advocate counselor. Everybody else was full-time, as I recall. So in a way, I was hired as like a separate type person, or drum roll, please, wait for it. You guessed it, a target. See how I'm different than the other people who are there and could have time to collude or corroborate or plan or talk about things in the absence of another. But I didn't think about that. I kind of thought it was ideal-ish, whatever. Actually, I did want a full-time job, but I was like, whatever, I need to take whatever I can get because I had been hopping around from jobs and stuff like that after freelance writing for a long time. And prior to that, being an on-staff writer for North American Publishing Company. And in retrospect, my journey here in Philadelphia has been, replete with entities that might be fronting on some level, which is why I've had a hard time. Even Whole Foods is in question. But anyway, so at this agency, a lot of things happened, but one would include I walked out of my little office. So I had a smaller office. It was like long and thin. And it existed where Canopy Hotel is now. But it looks like can, C-A-N in one font and O-P-Y in cursive. Why did they separate the opie from the can? Like opiates? Because that whole complex there where, it didn't look like a complex in the past. They have created this whole complex in an area, Ludlow Street, 11 and 12th. So on 12th and 21 South 12th Street is where the building is. Federal Donuts is in the bottom, and Canopy is the hotel. Canopy used to be where Brian Sims's office was, the senator, the first gay senator for Philly, Pennsylvania, however it works. He would be like a state senator. But his office was in the bottom, and the entryway was on 12th Street. Now they have an entrance on Ludlow as part of, I call it the Drug Enforcement Agency complex because of so many references, like the Girard would be across the street, and Girard Avenue would be a good divider line between when drugs really kick up. South of Girard, it would be like, okay. But anyway, so now it's called Canopy, but in the past, it was a regular building that might have had a lot of agencies in it, social service agencies for people and various other things. But the fact that even Brian Sims' office was in there shows you that there's some government connection. So show up there and coming out, there were always things going on, but I came out of the office and walked down. I forget if I was going to peek into my neighbor's office. Oh, they can't do anything because they're lying. So my concern is if I were to name every entity or person that I came in contact with there, could they come back on me and say, oh, she's, and I'm stating my experience and opinion, but because they're lying, they know they really don't have any rights to stand on. They know they're wrong. And this is an agency that purports non-abuse and how to free yourself from abuse. Can you imagine being hired and believing a place is a normal place? And you're like, oh, this is awesome. I can work in a field that can make me feel good, or I can learn a lot. There was a lot to learn in this because I didn't understand a lot of dynamics all the time. And it's like, there's always a work in progress. A lot of people would come in, you start to learn like all the different situations that people are in, if they're real or, I did wonder if some of the people who came in to seek out counseling or advocacy And are they telling the truth, or are they just told to come in, or are they playing around? So you never know that wherever you work. Even if you're a doctor, you're like, is this a real person? And they're self-pay, they don't have insurance. Or even if they had insurance, it doesn't matter, they could still be an actor. They do hire people to go in as secret shoppers, if you will. So anyway, come out of my office, and there was a water fountain right outside my office. And I turned and kind of like was headed maybe down the hall. And I did peek in really quick to my neighbor's office, and she had a Dixie cup and was leaning her head against the wall, and with a Dixie cup between her ear and the wall. And I was like, but it was weird. And like, I was like, oh, did I catch her eavesdropping? Or is she I did at the time, I was like, I don't even know if cups really work against the wall. Like, it just seems so dumb. So that actually didn't bother me as much. It's just easier to describe a situation like that. But I was like, what is she doing? And technically, of all the people there, she was one of the ones that I kind of was okay with. She kept her door closed a lot. She worked on her thesis while she pursued a master's or a doctorate. I don't even know. And probably a master's. So anyway, no one, pursuing a major doctorate probably would have wound up there working anyway. But another obvious thing, and I'll end it with this one, was that each employee would have like a meeting with the supervisor or the assistant director or whatever, Irene. So I went in there, and for some weird reason, I had a lot of water, and all of a sudden I had to go to the bathroom. And I was like, is it okay if I go to the bathroom really quick? I didn't realize that this would be an issue. Normally I wouldn't even say something like that, but it was an actual thing that the minute I walked in her door, I had to go to the bathroom really bad. So I was like, is it okay if I go really quick and then come back? And then we start this, feedback meeting or whatever. So go to the bathroom, come back. The next day, I'm sitting in my office, and the door was open, and around comes one of the workers, one of the employees who serviced. She usually worked with clients who would come in who were both suffering substance abuse problems and needing to get out of a domestic violence issue. It's hard to explain, but anyway, because she had been there, she had more experience talking about this kind of thing. So she comes around, she's got a big thermos, and she's more than happy to stand in front of my office, pressed her hand on the water fountain button, and she's filling up her water going, God, I need to drink so much water, but I have a meeting with Irene today, but I don't want to have to go to the bathroom when I'm in there. And it was like she was overjoyed to sort of creep me out by showing that she knew that I had to go to the bathroom. Her office was next door to the second in charge or whatever. I don't know what her title was, because it was unbelievable that these people were behaving in such a way and had certain titles. It was the entire experience was incredibly disturbing. I did wind up leaving, and I just can't believe it. I come from a world where I didn't know things were orchestrated. Like, I actually was just trying to live life and have a job and be able to get. We have to pay bills, and they don't think things are orchestrated. Like, they're not going to say, oh, don't worry, you don't have to pay your bill this month because everything's orchestrated, everything's fake. You see what I mean? We have to go to work in order to pay for our basic necessities. So how is it okay that an agency can get away with claiming to be fake? Well, if you can be fake, then I don't got to pay my bills. You see what I mean? But the woman who had to get the wash, she couldn't help herself. She had to come out there and creep me out by showing that she knew that I had to hurry up and go to the bathroom. And I started to wonder if she was like had spied on the meeting, or it was supposed to be a private meeting was the whole point. Or how did she know that I had to go to the bathroom? She either heard me in some way, or she was paying too close attention to me meeting up with the boss, I guess, if you want to call her that. It's hard to respect these people. I don't respect them at all. They're very creepy. They're crazy makers. And that sort of catapulted me into saying, you know what, I'm out. I was there for about 4 months or so, and I'm out. That's when I went full-time dog walking and prayed to God that I could find enough dog walks. The thing is, it put me out into a situation where now I have to hustle, because there's a lot of hustling involved in order to find clients. But also you're out there in the streets. Anyway, whole big thing. But in a way, they aided and embedded. They corroborated with a massive group that would cause a lot of terror. I do consider people terrorists on some level, psychological terrorists. Who are they to play God? Who are they to put forth an agenda on the extreme side? Who are they to single out one person in a group? Are they racist? Because this was a very diverse group. I didn't even care. Like, I didn't even think of it, really. I had been used to living in the city, and I actually loved the idea of diversity. So there was one or two other people, who I guess kind of look. I actually don't naturally have blonde hair. I bleached my hair. I actually am a brunette. But I wonder if they're racist and if they conducted a very racist study or experiment upon someone. I kind of wonder if they do it to everyone who gets hired into that. This has been many years ago. This was 2008-9. So right, the end of 8 into 9, or end of 9 into 10. I can't remember exactly, but it might have been the end of 9 into 10. What they don't know is I technically fit one of the biggest minority groups in the entire world, and that's because I have O-negative blood. And what if skin weren't an issue any longer, but actual blood type was? And people at higher levels would understand DNA and blood in a way that other people, like, you don't even think of it. Why are people wired a certain way? Where do they come from? How old is O-negative blood? Why does O-negative blood have the highest immunity of all blood types? Why do all blood types rely on people with O-negative blood? Our blood can be used for anyone who desperately needs blood transfusions or what have you, because they wind up in hospital or in the OR and so forth and so on. No other blood type can be used the way O-negative blood can, and we're also immune to HIV and AIDS. And still, scientists, they're working on O-negative blood to see if they can get the mutated gene to proliferate in other people's blood. We are here to save lives. I do feel like I was singled out. I do feel like there was some racism going on against me. I know that's very daring to say. I totally understand the whole infrastructure. I totally get it. To a degree. I grew up in a very suffering way. And what's worse is if there's psychological suffering, you can't pinpoint, you can't always single out or point to a source. If a bunch of people, I'm used to being outnumbered. I grew up in a divorce situation and I was the only one. I went over to the other house for many years after my sister stopped going because of the dynamics. So I am used to having to be put in situations constantly where I just sat there, and in a way, our family was a microcosm of a larger issue. So anyway, with that said, gotta go. I'm kind of late for my first dog walk. So have a great day. I really appreciate it. And I know, this, I don't know, whatever. It is very sick what has happened in my case. And I do expect a payout at some point in time. Okay. Thank you so much and have a great day.